Thanks, Maria, and welcome to those in public forum members and staff to the Vincent Community Board meeting for Monday, the 9th of June. Hope you all had a great weekend and hope you're ready for quite a packed public forum today. So we'll start off with apologies. So we've got one from Councillor Patterson. Something to be to receive that. Roger, second. Thank you. And now we'll move straight into the public forum. So it is quite busy. So just a reminder that you've got 5 minutes and we've really got to stick to that 5 minutes today. So first up, welcome back, Ken Churchill. It's been a while.
Yeah. We don't go away. No, it's not. So the clock starts now. Kia, everybody, Mr. Chairman, and this slideshow, it's just to highlight the Aranui Dam and the two problems which may or may not exist. That the words pretty much cover it, and so I've highlighted it to Jane, who took the time to come and have a walk around, and the Mayor, who's not here today. So it's been addressed. I also addressed it at the short-term plan, which was a bit of a maybe not. So Aranui Dam was built in 1909 by the Magnus brothers, and in 1910, what people call the steps was actually buttressing. It started bulging. I and quite a good of us look after the place, and in the times that I've been maintaining it, or we've been maintaining it, I've noticed a slight deterioration in the rock wall. So that's part one of it, and the slides will pick it up. Part two is just to show the historical input that this community had, or particularly the Bridge Hill and beyond, of spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars getting the Raupo cleaned out in 2014. By then, they just about covered up the whole of the pond. So there's a few slides. Probably get the idea that I never had Tonka toys when I was a kid, and that's why they were on me. So that'd be good, Sarah. Thanks. So you'll see a bulge in the wall, and you'll see the buttressing down at the far end. I believe it's been caused by rotting willows that they took out at the start of this job. The push in the wall has become slightly more pronounced, and when we get to the cracks in the wall, you'll see what are indicators to me. This part of my talk is just to have it registered that I believe that there's an issue going on with it. Not going to be a catastrophic failure imminently, but I think it's a thing that needs taken on board big time.
Next slide.
So, are you doing one at a time?
Yeah, it's not doing it on the top.
Okay, that's good.
Perfect.
So that'll give you an idea. That'll give you an idea of the vertical breaking, and they're massive. They're big bits of rock, and they're the breaks. So it's just an indication something's wrong. This is the big willow tree that rotted. That would have caused pushing against the wall, but now that it's rotting to that degree in under, I believe there's an ingress of water in and under. It's just from a layman's point of view. This is the sluice valve for emptying it. I dug it out the other day to take this photo. That should all be clear. The valve, the valve itself is not in the best condition. The water actually has to run from the, that's okay, run away. So I hope you're caught. This is just a quick rundown of what the locals did. This was the scale of this project back in 2014, all donated without 1 cent, I understand, coming from the council or even DOC. and it was a huge commitment. That'll give you an idea of what the reeds were like as they were coming out. And this is only 10 years ago. There was a lot of stuff donated that they donated, road metals donated that for the beaches. There was gravels donated for tracks, and subsequent to that, tables and chairs have been donated around the place. That's the northwest end. You'll get an idea of just how much those things have grown.
Next one.
Yeah. Hugh Clark, who put this whole project together, and I call him a star, and probably might be saying that, but it was incredible. And from a local community perspective, why I feel and we feel so strongly about it is we'd never get a chance to get all that back together on a free basis. That was just prior to it. We're still under. This is the sort of look we'd like to come back to. The foreshore clear of Raupo right round, except for one wee corner, which I think we'll get to. It's starting to choke that. There's also a few saplings which are starting to choke the native flaxes, but I didn't take any photos of those because there's a limit to the size I could send. That lot there were to be left for breeding purposes for the waterfowl. That's probably 4 times larger than what was agreed to be left. If you've been around there, you'll see the wee jetty. It won't be long before they actually reach the jetty if nothing is actually done. Pretty much right round. It's a bit repetitive, but just to get a visual of what's actually happened or going on. That's as we see it now. That's probably, it says it here. This is just an add-on, but all of us that maintain there, we end up dumping stuff there. We would actually like it if that could be mulched and taken away. But the traps from that particular area, people that us that maintain the place, we are forever picking up dead stuff, storm damage, and the odd wilding pine and stuff that's, grows up in that particular area. But there's a group of us that work there. Most of us are here today. One of the trustees from the Jollendale Park chips in a wee bit. He's a blended family on the backs onto the reserve. They're big time. They look after a slightly elevated place. So council do come up there with the maintenance program, but because of the nature of the place and our perception of what we think it should have been from when it was cleaned out is that basically had clear foreshores right down to the water's edge. Aesthetically, people may disagree with that. But in the 10 years now, the Raupo themselves seem to be really going for it. I don't know whether they're on steroids or what, but that seems to go.
Thank you. Thanks again. Before you go, are there any questions or comments? Roger.
Hey, comments. My experience with Raupo is that there's absolutely no way of keeping it out. It'll come back regardless, no matter what you do. It'll come through the water, race into that dam. The other thing is about the stone wall. Reminds me of the stone wall around St Enoch's Church, part of which collapsed, and it's just a factor of those dry stone wall constructions that eventually.
The stone wall up there is it's not a facade, it's an engineered structure way back, but it's rammed earth behind it.
Yeah.
On the water side. Down at St, I understand that let go because of water underneath it.
Who owns the dam?
Well, it's probably Lynn's.
Well, yes. So I did email you saying that, but it's
I think it's actually
it's now looking like it's us.
Yeah, it's like,
It's the council.
it looks like BCP resolution in 2015.
Right, well, council owns it. What, that doesn't have any.
My understanding, and talking with Hugh Clark way back, was almost at the time that started, some of his initial discussions were with Doc, and that almost at that same time it was divested from Doc, and I use that loosely, to CODC. That's my understanding. Back to Raupo's, Roger, is as a layman, if this thing was to progress, would be to lower the water level by 0.5 metre. Get rid of them with way smaller project than that. With a 3 or 5 ton diggers type of stuff, get rid of them. And then ongoing, I hate to use the word because people go, one of the only things that knocks it over on a regular basis is tordon. Glyphosate does work. It needs a wetting agent. I've experienced, I don't know if I've incriminated myself here, I've experienced with these things, chopped them off like that. They've actually sprayed into the hollow stems. Very limited success. That's all I know about that.
So, Gordy, does the council have a reserve management plan for that area? No.
Probably just as well because us renegades, we carry on maintaining it that way, but I don't get it. It's one of those collaboration things. It's not a criticism of the council's maintenance program. They use big gang mowers. They can get down some of it, but a lot of the little smaller works, we pick it up. One of those places everybody loves. It's a hugely popular reserve, hugely.
I was just going to ask the same question. Is there any way that we can deal with this rapid? Is there any way we can bring it in? Is there any way that we can help deal with the race?
Yes.
That would be good.
Yeah.
I didn't want to tie the two things together. It was just one speaking opportunity, and it's because I noticed the vertical cracks in a lot of that rock, which clearly demonstrates subsidence, weight dries out. Because some of those slabs are like that, so you won't just break them without horrendous weight on them.
Well, if that rock gave way, you're rolling, isn't it? It's,
Yeah, it would probably fall out and leave. I mean, I don't actually know what's behind there. Well, red earth, but I know there's massive willow root structure. One of those slides from this side would have showed the trees after they'd been chopped off, and one of the other slides showed pre-CODC time at the very start of the project. That was a dock removal with the spool line together, getting rid of the stuff in the very front.
because you're right, that dam combined with the John and Dale broken trees behind it, it's a wonderful fact.
I know, yeah. I checked out of that meeting way back, and it was a collaboration when Mannings was still with us about what they could and couldn't do, but it was hard to work out what they actually report. Yeah, but it has been talked about way back. But anyway, we just hope that we can get it fixed, not just because I live over the road.
Yeah, so, no, thank you very much. So Gordy will get a report on that at some point.
Cheers.
And thank you for all the work that you and the community do.
Once again, thanks for coming around with this because it makes a difference seeing it in person.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Cheers.
No, thank you. Next, we've got Nicola Ray. Now, so I was going to get a quick explanation to this one.
Oh, yes, so just before Nicola speaks, what happened during the long-term plan process is Nicola had put in 2 different submissions, and we do need to communicate this better, because what happens within our process is typically we don't accept 2 submissions. So what Nicola's going to speak to you about today wasn't included in the long-term plan submission process, because the general rule was sort of 1 submission per person. But so we'll fix that for next time. So apologies for Nicola, that got omitted without any communication back to Nicola.
Thank you. I'll just quickly add to Ken's comments, because I've worked for the council in the past team when council decided to take on Aranui Dam, which had been sitting under management and ownership dock. And I believe there was a few issues. It was alerted that there was an issue with the wall and this other wall at the time. So there's another wall, a dam wall, which leaks when the dam gets too high and it floods a lady's backyard. So just treat with caution would be my advice. And we've actually, as a syndicate of an irrigation company, just done some rail post control for ourselves, and we used a local drone operator. Yet to see if it was successful, but apparently autumn is the time to do spraying of railpo, and drone is a really cost-effective way of doing it if you've got a relatively small area, so just something to consider. But yeah, thank you for having me. I apologise for breaking the rules and putting 2 submissions and I didn't even think about it. So my submission was regarding rolling pine control and pest management. We are back onto the Alexandria Airport Reserve and I have taken it upon myself to actively remove wilding conifers. Most of the times when I go out with my dog, I pull them out by hand or I take a pair of lockers and look like a bit of a nutter out there chopping away at things. But and initially kicked off, we got some family photos taken out there 4 or 5 years ago. And I looked in the family photo and it was just a gravel track. And walked past that same area about 2 years ago. I thought, oh my gosh, there's a massive pine tree. Well, massive, it's full of me, so not that big. But and I thought, how did that get there? That wasn't in the family photos we took a couple of years earlier. So I thought, well, this isn't good enough. So I started doing it myself. My concern is that, I mean, I don't know because I haven't read all the paperwork, but I'm not sure if there's any plans to control the existing conifers that are there and those going forward. I've taken out over 950 just on my own efforts, and most of them now beyond my capabilities because they involve a chainsaw or some aerial spraying. I know there's been some back in the past with some wilding pine control that's been carried out. But I think we sort of don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's other areas of the Airport Reserve being one. I know Lower Mannerburn is another area, and I'm sure there's other council-owned reserves that have got a similar issue. So you're just wanting to make sure that the board members and the council are aware of the issue, and we're really keen to know, we'll have that feedback to the community what the plan is to maintain it going forward, so that the momentum that started doesn't get lost. So we park it and say, well, you know, the cost of everything's going up. We don't. It's a sort of a nice to have, not a need to have. And next generation are going to be dealing with a whole forest to try and eradicate, as opposed to saplings or seedlings that are manageable in size. And my other concern was around the rabbit control, particularly the Airport Reserve, but across council-owned reserve land, because if you're a regular user of that space, it's absolutely smothered with rabbits. I know that recently there was a week-long night shooting exercise carried out, maybe the last couple of months, which seems quite ad hoc, seems to be nothing, and then occasionally there's some rabbit night shooting, and then there's nothing for another couple of years. So obviously rabbits being rabbits, they procreate and the numbers balloon overnight. And obviously, I understand it's difficult. You know, not everyone who's a lifestyle block owner or a farm owner or backing onto a council reserve is undertaking their own active rabbit control or pest control. But I don't know if there's a way we can do it as a community that everybody kind of works for the same goal. That, you know, I'm doing it in my backyard, you guys are doing it in the council reserve. That's going to only encourage the person next door to try and take some ownership and do something. And I know that, you know, as a regional level, regional council used to do some, and that seems to be no longer. They serve more of a observation and counting numbers as opposed to actually physically removing the pest. But yeah, also keen to hear if there's any plans to implement a strategy or a management plan for pests going forward. I know it's mentioned in the outdoor rec strategy, or it's referenced the regional council's pest management strategies referenced in the council's rec strategy, but yeah, it's keen to know, I guess, and share the information out to the public. I think there's a plan to get on top of things. I know it's like fighting a losing battle, but
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Well, great to have a community-led initiative, but I remember it'll be over 10 years ago now, I think, that DOC organised a pine eradication day at the around the airport, so we all came with chainsaws and so on. But I think with increasing concerns about health and safety, is that becoming perhaps more difficult to put in place?
I believe it would be, yes.
Mm.
There's a lot of cowboys. for people that think they know what they're doing. And a lot of the trees have become, they're large trees now, you know, it's not just a few meters tall, and it's sort of a decent sized tree. That's not just, it's a forestry gang kind of a job. I don't know whether it's chop them and leave them. Some people may disagree, but yeah, it is becoming quite an issue. And neighbour said when she was a child in her, she's nearly 40s, there was one large tree she recalls in the back, over the back fence, and now there's thousands.
Is it quite close to the endangered vehicle?
I don't think it'll be a danger to the airport runway and use of the runway as such, but most of it's, you know, there's the terrace at the airport's on, and it's sort of all down the sides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Worth a look if you're looking for a field trip.
That's very clean.
It's along the whole face though, isn't
Yes, it is.
Gordy, is there any plans for up there at this stage?
Not at this stage, but I recall it was one of their high profile places when the government had funding for subsidising that. Government's got a little bit of money again aside for that, but whether that'll go to that priority level, I'm not sure yet. So it's with the progress on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
And I should have said this at the start, but the mayor is with us. She's on Teams at the moment.
Yeah.
Next, we've got Professor Brian Boyle.
Yoga boy, thank you very much for listening to me. Since you don't know me, I'll give you a wee bit of an introduction. I am the chair of Winterstellar Charitable Trust that's founded in Alexandra. As a former professional astronomer, I ran one of the world's largest optical telescopes for many years and also built the largest radio telescope in the wilds of Western Australia. I say that not to big note myself, but to tell you with some authority, the Central Otago is the best place in the world for casual stargazing. Yes, you knew that already, I know. Why? Because you are closer to the South Geomagnetic Pole than 99.99% of the world's population. We live in the Southern Hemisphere with ready access to the Magellanic Clouds in the centre of our Milky Way galaxy. You could be a mecca for astrotourism. A very much a growing population of people, particularly among rich American gynecologists and opticians, I like to discover. Winterstellar was established to promote this amazing natural resource you have here, but also to call attention to one of the biggest challenges about that great natural resource. That is that over the world, the average brightness of the night sky has doubled in the last 8 years. We are gradually surrounding ourselves in a miasma of unnecessary light. It is the largest single anthropogenic change on the planet. May not be the most important one, I would say climate change and glaciers melting, probably a little bit more important, but our loss of our shared heritage and our shared knowledge of the night sky is also a very significant issue and a very insidious one. It is almost like climate change. It is badly reversible and mostly unnecessary. I can't think of any reason to like the sky, other than perhaps, well, locally, Queenstown Airport. But this is easily fixed. So our idea with Winterstellar is to help people understand what good lighting is. Please don't get me wrong, dark sky is not about no lighting, because development will happen, and we need development to happen for a viable economic future for all of us. However, lots of lighting doesn't mean increased safety or security outcomes. In fact, it usually means the reverse, because we dazzle and glare actually degrades those outcomes. So good lighting. We want to be able to promote Central Otago's amazing natural resource through the establishment of the Winterstellar Astronomical Site Programme. We could ask our local communities to go for international dark sky status. Having pretty much single-handedly got that international dark sky status for Gippsland, I know that it takes about 300 hours of effort, and that was from someone who was a professional astronomer for all of their lives. It's unfair to ask small communities to do that, but we still want to promote what we have here internationally to the world. Winter Stella Winter Stella Charity Trust would like to do that by promoting the quality George you have here in the small communities like Lauder, Bannockburn, St Athens, to show the rest of the world that you really need to come here. So the one thing we're asking you to do today is to consider the support for the Winter Stella Astronomical Site for your communities here, so they may leverage this fantastic opportunity you have, not only for astrotourism, but to allow us all to share that cultural appreciation of this unique natural resource you have here. And I say that as a Gibston resident, you have better skies than I do, because you're clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that my 5 minutes?
Good, a minute and 8 seconds.
Is there any questions or comments? Well, thank you for coming in and thanks for the energy. That was a great boost in the morning. All right. Next up, we've got Daryl Jones from the Lauder community.
Yes, so we're a quick take one past one. Thank you. Further to what Brian just said, Lauder is basically applying for one of these Winter Stella astronomical site recognitions, so we'll be first cab off the rank of Central Otago. The entire community via the Lauder Beautification Society, which most of you may be aware of. Beautification Society, they're quite a tenacious little outfit, and responsible for shifting the old Lauder station across the road back to Lauder. So the whole community has decided to get in behind this dark sky initiative. So this is a copy of their application for the award. So what we're requiring from the council, or what Winter Stella would like us to obtain from the council, is a letter of support that you support us applying for this award and trying to establish a dark sky area around the Lauder environment. We've had, over the last 18 months since the American/Australian tourists are starting to return, we get regular inquiries from people stating, is there something we can do to look at the night skies? What can we see here? It's becoming quite a prevalent question. And so there's opportunity there for several business opportunities to develop a Lauder based around the night sky or the dark sky phenomenon. So that, yeah, basically we would like a letter of support from you guys that we have aspirations to become dark sky are a good mission. So in a nutshell,
Martin?
Council was supporting Naismith's application.
Correct.
And that's coming to fruition, sort of. So actually, yeah. And I'll fire this question at you and it might bounce back.
Yeah.
How many applications can go into the pot? And is there a risk of, do we get Naismith out of the road first and get their tip next to that, then concentrate on expanding it?
The goal is like Winter Stella, ultimate goal is to have the entire area designated dark sky. So part of that, you get all the communities on board that want to be connected. And if you go for international dark sky status, you have to show you have community involvement, community outreach, got programs in place to support the initiative. So Winter Stella starting this initiative is building towards greater knowledge to make an application for the entire area within dark sky status of sun. All right.
Absolutely right.
Andy, are you coming up with the next speaker?
We will be talking about St Athens, but I'm going to answer this question about Naseby. Is they're going to be the next Dark Sky International meeting in July, in the beginning of July. We'll be pushed them for April. All the T's and crosses and I's dotted. So it may happen in July or it may not. But we've delayed this Winter Stella Astro Site program, waiting for Naseby since February. We need to
keep our momentum going. And we've got the rural review coming up. So part of our talking to our communities to get plenty of submissions to express to you guys the desire that in communities with our architecture.
So the council, if VCB or council gives a bit of support or endorses this application, you're telling me that there's no effect on what's going on.
I think it'll have reverse effect. I think it'll actually encourage to get over the line, because having interacted with the international community, what they are desperate for is actually to see support from the elected group of bodies around them. So they're actually more looking to you for the lead. They tend not to take the lead because they're afraid of stepping too much into the politics locally. So I think you taking the leadership position will actually help not only these, but also future applications.
Yeah, one question, the first word that struck me when I read the paper was a quiet gem. So you're saying quiet is what you used to do, but it's not going to be a quiet gem. That's not what you're talking about. We need to be on the front foot along it.
Yeah, right. Because there is a growing international tourism scene dedicated to economically backstops. They're literally traveling the world to do this. Central Tigers Drive here is one of the best in the world. Now I've been doing light meter readings as part of this application, and we undoubtedly we've got better dark skies than Tiwai. With a good opportunity for Central Otago leverage that as an association to the tourism area, particularly with the rail trail running through the whole valley. You can tap into that night sky light as well. And it also, because generally the night sky obviously is better to view here in autumn, winter, early spring, so I say it tends to get in the way. It's an opportunity to have tourism over those shoal seas where a community dies off. You could add it will keep tourism humming through the winter, not to the extent of summer, but ultimately it could rival summer activity.
And the frustration of seeing tourist dollars arriving at Queenstown International Airport, going straight up technically to the dark sky when they can come here. Yeah.
But now's been moved on the accreditation for several years, and we're one of the customers of the application for international dark sky, so it'd be good to just get that over there.
Well, it's really, as Brian said, this actually we need to get it over the line. And we're not applying for international status, we're applying for, and basically a recognition by the council that we've got an asset here that needs to be preserved and looked after. It's women at this stage, Laura and St. Bathans, we're not applying for international status, we just want recognition on a local status that the skies we have now should be protected. As a community, we want to move forward and protect that. And part of that is getting the accreditation in Interstellar.
So now you've also applied for Stellar Astroscience status as well. The same status as St. Catherine's and Florida have. But yeah, we're waiting for them to get their Dark Sky International so they can tell the world about that. In regards to the where we will put the news about becoming the Interstellar Astroscience, it is very much local. We did it with Glenelg. Glenelg got the Interstellar Astroscience accredited about 3 months before the International Dark Sky Sanctuary status. We put a press release into local press, and that's picked up by local press. But it's only when we got the International Dark Sky Sanctuary status that it went into, international UK and US publications. So I don't think we'll be stealing too much from the Naseby. And Naseby have applied to the Interstellar Astroscience plan, but you're Vincent, so we spoke about it.
Well, thank you very much. It's actually quite a lot going on in that space. And we've got one more speaker on this. So next up we've got Monique Kelly from St. Bathans with.
I'm not Monique, and neither is Monique couldn't make it. I'm here in the place. I'm here in the Australian, and I'm in the St. Bathans Community Association. I'm doing speaking now. Yeah, in April, apart from going to Naseby for the night sky celebration which we had hoped would be a announcement of getting a Dark Sky International status. Yeah, we had half the village out in Naseby to look at the night sky, to have the telescopes out, and got lots of local astronomical talent. Maybe not Nobel Prize winners, but they've got plenty of astronomical talent there, and that was an awesome evening. But a couple of evenings before, I was invited to the Vulcan Hotel to talk to the St. Bathans in Cambrian Community Association, and I presented to them the opportunities that they have with the Interstellar Astroscience Programme. They have me at the Vulcan Hotel, so it was a good evening. And I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the community there, but it was pretty much unanimous support for them to pursue this Interstellar Astroscience Programme. So we've created Monique has created a draft application. So that needs to go back to their board to get their sign off. But while we're here today, we'd like to ask the Vincent Community Board to give us a letter of St. Bathans application. St. Bathans night skies are superior to Naseby, superior to the measurements, the scale that you measure to for dark sky quality is 22 is the limit, and that's exactly what St. Bathans is. Well, it's certainly what it was in 2015. Since then, in about 2020, there's been 2 street lights installed in St. Bathans in some random places with no particular purpose. They're just outside when you get into the 100 zone after going up the hill. I experienced them myself on Saturday, going up to see the snow, and yeah, watching the lights come on in the village in the twilight. It was quite nice, apart from these 2 big lights up the hill. So these lights were brought to my attention by the St. Bathans community, and yeah, so as well as the electric support, I'd just like to bring to the attention that there are some things that we can do to improve the lighting in St. Bathans. Have you got anything to say?
Yeah. You were saying about community support, it just about everybody seems to support it. But there is a question about what advantage are we going to have? When you say about the tourism and that, but are they going to come to St. Bathans, go to Naseby or Water? Or... So we think that the whole area should be included rather than every district doing their own application. But I don't know how you facilitate that. But like you were saying, if Naseby's just about over the line, then there's a whole lot more lining up. Can they not all be combined and save a lot of work?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the Central Otago International Dark Sky Reserve is the end game, and in time for 2028 total solar eclipse. And but getting community support is something that we need to justify that application. Is there any questions about the whole thing as we talked about this morning?
I'm going to just direct a question to staff through our CEO. I don't think I think there's a huge amount of support for this from around this table. And I don't want to use this word, but it is a no-brainer. Just how do we best support it? I mean,
I expect a letter from the board and a letter from the council, and then in due course, and then to support the ongoing process. I mean, 300 hours by a trained professional just for the Gippsland Valley, that's a lot of effort to master that. I mean, to multiply that across the district of 10,000 square kilometres.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's the logic of having a central town, you know, being kind of, you know, it's an international, it's, and are we doing a bit of a piecemeal process, but like putting the bits of a jigsaw puzzle together? That's a great observation. And you're right about 300 hours, but of course, you know, 50 people don't take a whole 50 times faster than one person, but you know, yeah. So there's the economy of scale. How long would it take, I don't know. Of course, I've made a lot of mistakes, and in fact, lots of us have made basically it's taken almost 7 years to get community status. So you would think that we could be more efficient if we were to do things in a holistic way across the district. I couldn't give you a good answer to the time for that. It's a lot.
What's one question to follow up on Peter's comment? Is there a way we can embed it, the concepts a little bit more in our planning? I'm just doing my LTP. I know we can pick them off like 2 brick lights here and down lights in the bridge, and how do we draw attention to those?
Yeah, so part of the delay for Naseby was there was a requirement that we had something in the district plan. So we worked through and have gone through a plan change process, which actually controls that lighting admission. And I know that the grading team looked at the type of lights we use, street lights now. So I don't know that the same delays will occur for other areas, but it would be quite good to sort of pull all this together and understand it so that we can support the groups.
I mean, it's true that with this, you know, we've started the rural chapter was here as well.
Yeah.
With the number of these little settlements.
And hopefully some of you have been to meetings, because we're pulling together the feedback from the community meetings that we're having for the rural chapter. So, yeah, that's right.
Because the comment about, you know, the lighting on the bridge, that was brought to my attention by residents of Bridge Hill who complained about the fact that we did it off. As soon as I explained why, they went, oh, I'm quite accepting the fact that they like this is yeah. So we can give some assurance that yes, the VCB does support, and will get a letter from us. Both groups, but it sounds like staff have picked up on the idea that ideally some more holistic approach to the whole process will be worked on.
So we're going to pass over to Roger, who's been patiently waiting.
Yeah, just a comment. I have had queries from the United States, or people in the United States, in terms of coming here. So I think there is great potential.
Yeah. Winter Stella have got resources working with other local authorities in helping them between jobs and status not too far away. So we do have the resources, and maybe it's 200 hours, maybe more, but we'd like to engage in some communications on how we can work together more formally rather than.
So what's your timeline here? Needing for this?
I'd like to it to be an international dark sky reserve by 2027.
Ambitious.
Enough time for planning to change things, have everything in place for a successful application. Because 2028, we're expecting people to be coming here for the total solar eclipse, and it's very easy to say, come for the eclipse. You might see it might be cloudy, who knows? But stay for the dark skies, because the same people that are going to be interested in one phenomenon are going to be interested in other phenomena that you can see night after night in our night skies in the middle of July.
I think you made a really important statement that this board is being really important to. This board feels inclined to support this initiative. I think one of the next step is for all the community representatives, the Central Town District Council and Winterset to sit down and plan it out, what the actual resource requirements are, and then we see how, you know, what the next steps we need to take are before we say, yes, we'll do it by 2028, until we actually know what the resource requirements are and the challenges are and the risks. But I mean, I think the next step is a proper plan. Can you agree?
I'd say so. We look at, obviously, letter of support's good, but unless there's actual other ideas and planning going on around it, it's effectively pointless.
Yeah.
So I think, can we get something to the board at the next meeting? pull some of this information together, or the one after that? Just simply.
Well, I wouldn't have thought we couldn't get something to the board, it's just shaping what the board's intentions are and being quite clear on that. As a statement, you know, as possible, and then follow up with council, but I mean, apart from seeing, so there's no reason why we couldn't get something up to the board, it's just making sure that the board's attuned to the thinking.
It's such a huge opportunity, you know, as Roger said, you know, North Americans, or North people from the Northern Hemisphere, particularly perturbed because they don't have the same sky as we do. That's true. And trying to explain that to Americans, it's always very
March this year, I had a group of American tourists arrive for dinner. Specifically from Texas, came to Central Otago to see what Orion looked like in their skies, because for her it was upside down. She wanted to see it upside down, and at the same time look at the Southern Cross. So she basically flew all the way here to do that. But on an aside, she decided to do the rail trail as well. But she came to see Orion upside down.
You also get more aurora here than
Yes.
Well, thank you guys very much for your time. And yeah, we'll get something together. Thank you. Right, and next we've got Warren Cullen and David Ritchie for Common Hey Riverside Park. Welcome. Are you?
Yes.
Welcome.
I've only been out 7 years.
We're very proactive these days.
Yeah, it was really just to give the support on the behalf of the trust to try and get this job finished. You know, I'm not sure what information we have about what more funding is needed to work the next stage, which is getting the ramp down to the river and getting the access to the river. But the whole purpose of the project is to bring the town centre to the river and get these tourist operations and things working, and try and get some real economic benefit from the hard work that we've done so far. So there's the plaza is due for completion soon. Seeing others get on board and try and add value to it. Likes of the Wairau Trust with the link to finish off the network of bike tracks, so I can bring the track around to the Linger and Die. We've seen the Contact Energy doing their LVAMP thing, what they're wanting to do on the landscape. This is only just adding value to what we've already done, but it's really just to see if we can get the help to get the job finished really, and there's we'll go to building with all the costs that's come onto the project since we've begun, that have been added. Yeah, it's only just made that go a little bit harder to get this part of the project finished, but that was really just get the job done really.
Any questions?
while you're here, Rory, not on the subject of that, and that's raised concrete each thing. Can the trust please is behind supporting its removal? It's causing all sorts of grief to people who are using that pathway. It seems to be engineers gone nuts. And you know, I'm getting numerous people complaining to me about it. They just need some support to get rid of the damn thing. Because it's why it was, you know, what's purpose, this is beyond my comprehension.
Traffic calming measure. Prevention. It's not right.
Yeah, it was with engineers that have been really pushing to get it done, so it was nothing that we brought on ourselves. It was just to comply with
Can say we're getting, voting design to give us a report on. Whether it's doing the right thing.
Am I staying with that vehicles are getting stuck on?
I think as a board, we're all saying that we want.
Who'd like it gone?
But we can talk about that in the next part.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely have that conversation.
Just every opportunity I get. Maybe we can reframe it and tell we want to get alternative traffic management.
That's what we're at.
But for now, is there anything else for Rory regarding this funding? No, thank you very much. Yes. And big thanks to everybody who's been a part of the public forum today. It was a good one, nice packed one. I think we've all learned something. So we'll move on now to page 7, which is the confirmation of the minutes from the communal meeting on the 29th of April. Is somebody happy to move that? That's correct. Moved Roger, seconded Di, all in favour? Yeah. Carried. Declarations, so just a reminder, the members to be vigilant and stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises. You see anything?
Yeah. I've now stepped down from Central Otago REIT, been on the board for 14 years. Sort of time for fresh faces to appear there, so that's no longer one of my conflicts.
Be a big change for them. Is anybody else? So I just was going to note that, well, I don't believe sitting on the working group creates an actual or perceived conflict of interest. I've decided that I will abstain from voting on the next agenda item around the park, but still happy to preside over this part of the meeting, but I just will not vote on it. So now we'll move on to page 19, agenda item 25.4.2, Kaimana Hey Hey Riverside Park, stage 2 ramp. Gordy.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think Rory's done it without my that, so I won't repeat that. Yes, it's been a long process, this project. There's been a lot of complicated and unexpected matters to deal with, as the chair will be aware of. And we've successfully manoeuvred through most of those now. And as you can see, things are starting to come above the ground. So that's quite good. So to finish the project, we're going to be, and we will be short of some funding. So this report is seeking some up to 400,000 from the reserve contribution fund, Vincent, to finish that project. There's always hope we can do it for less than that. That's what it's up to. We need to, it's not a target. So it's quite a complicated matter, and we've got that. So some of the costs are driven, for the report. We've got to drive piles into the ground in a specific manner. We'll need the concrete platform at the bottom, it's around about 30 grand on its own. The materials will around for another 110, so that's not put in or anything like that. And then there's, engineering fees about 25 grand on that, because we're driving them into unknown sort of land. We had to get some work done to drill some sample holes to see what the underlying substrate of the ground was, and those I think one of the better word, probably not an engineering word, but it's sort of takes, so we need to go down a long way to hold the structure up. And then there's some, there's all the fitting of the stainless steel so they don't rust, and there's all the flood protection. So there's a lot of engineering involved that was not foreseen, I guess, in the original design. So we're going to do it, we might as well do it properly rather than end up at Roxburgh at some point. So that's where we are. Yes, and just to go on, the entrance wall is getting a review of how that whole roading network in and out of there and round to the left and round to the right is working. So we'll have some results on it the next week. So we'll be able to know which way we need to move on. Thanks.
And can I just add, because I was involved at the time, the information that was put into the 2021 LTP was based on a report the trust had got done, which was over the sort of 2018-19 period. So they were the original estimates, except going back some, it was 6 years ago. Now, sort of the best guess at the time for some of those costs was outlined as sort of once the project got going, engineering advice was to speak on some of the materials originally envisioned.
Yeah, question. So if the original council 650,000, did that come from Vincent Reserves or from?
Good question.
I'm just thinking where the extra 400 should come from. That would be the same.
There was definitely a mixture. I want to say some of it was loan funded and some come out of reserves.
Yes.
That the
I have a feeling.
question.
Well, was just wondering that, is there anything, Roger?
Yeah, I'm just clarification, Gabion with GABION baskets and what are they?
Rock, wires of rock.
In a wire cage.
Yeah, wire.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Thanks. And I guess a comment, I think it's better to do the job properly first time rather than potentially facing rebuild in 5 or 10 years time after a flood has come through. So, yeah, I think it has to be done properly.
Anything else? I was still waiting.
This is part of this area down there. The build up of siltrate at the mouth of the nuclear river. Are we able to check up our CBC that contact our regional requirement?
Yes, so we took I see. I have a feeling the gravel extraction happens on a 3-yearly cycle. I believe it's coming use the next 3-yearly cycle. Yeah. So that
So that we hope to keep the part from flooding in the future.
that's the theory, yes. Yeah. Yeah, not what water's flowing.
Did I do anything?
No, I just think, I agree with Roger, we're just going to do it 100%.
Yeah, the preferred option in the consultation document, sorry, my memory wasn't quite correct, was to fully loan fund it, but I just need to double check that actually got pulled through to the final document. Oh, hold on, Donna's helping out here. Thank you, Donna. Loan funded was what was put through from the state.
Just thinking that 400 should not ask the question, is that not the same source? Why do we loan fund the first 650? And if logic for that not applies.
You wanna? It's an or
And then rating that back. Splitting the costs over.
So to loan fund that option, I'm just looking to pull here around LTP, that would obviously be a council decision.
Yes.
To loan fund that, impact with LTP to make that recommendation now.
But like,
Yeah.
Too late, given that we are currently in the process of audit, it wasn't decided as part of the deliberations. And any change to that wouldn't be made until 25th, I'm assuming, which is the date that we're hoping to adopt the long-term plan. So we couldn't specifically put that funding in to be reflected in the long-term plan.
Okay, I'm just thinking that we've just received this report on 400,000 now. If we'd known earlier, perhaps we could have made different decisions.
Yeah.
That's now.
I agree. You can see the cogs turning.
Yeah, I think we've got no choice but to, if we want to go ahead with this, to fund it from reserves. And to that extent, I'm quite happy to move the recommendation as stated.
Okay, so you'll, so Martin will move A, B and C, Linda will second it. Any further?
Sorry, can we just wait on, just if reserve fund contributions will be appropriate as opposed to general reserves?
We did check that this morning.
Yeah.
And the wording around reserve fund contributions for urban spaces is quite wide and loose to be said, so. It doesn't specifically in the last LTP, which we're still operating under policy. Isn't, if you're looking at tying it to growth and the likes, it's not that specific, so you could use those funds to do this.
Yeah. I'm saying the general reserves were taking quite a chunk out of that in the last month, so. We can leave that money in for a while.
We have earmarked in the LTP quite a usage of the general reserves to fund a lot of stuff for the LTP program.
And if I could just comment, there's risk of just choosing to do this without consideration of how you want to approach your reserve fund contribution might minimise your opportunity in the future if you have a capital spend of significance.
Yeah, so I wasn't on the credit. Leave that what I thought was that on, but it's a bit on food for the way to do. Okay. Got it.
So look at what there's been a change there. Discuss why wasn't this on the original?
Yeah, apologies, that would have got missed through the review of the paper. So there's a general process that anything that comes from reserves does get recommended back to council, which invariably council will approve. The reason being, if all community boards were taking big chunks out of reserves, it can impact our ability to borrow. Only council can approve full and I to borrow more money. So that's the logic behind the recommendation. Is that if extra line money is needed, council approves.
You happy with that change? Yeah. Emily, you happy with that? That's everything. Okay. So all in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Story. So now we've got the Alexandra Districts Museum Incorporated accountability report for 2023-2024 financial year. So welcome, Vincent. Come on.
I do. I have the movie, but I don't think it is it.
Yeah, it was only sent this morning on USB, so unfortunately we can't show it, but I'll make sure it's circulated to the board. We'll find a
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's pictures about what we've been doing the last 12 months. Thanks to your, you go.
Thank you, very keen. So thanks, everybody. You'll read my cover report to this accountability. It's a requirement of the grant that there is an annual accountability report. As my cover note states, I think very pleasing results for AMI yet again and very vibrant, and I think that's a reflection on particularly the staff of Central Stories. I just want to note a couple of things. There will still likely, this is for the, firstly, apologise for my error in the time report. It's for the 23-24 financial year and not the 22-23 report. It was in the, right at the top of my paper. Apologies for that. But so we're a year behind, and so there will still be one more. I was going to say this is the final accountability report that this board will consider, but that's not true. There will be one more because in the current financial year will be reported on next year to the Vincent Community Board, and then it will be tied up with the museum funding that's been determined by council. But it will be the last, you've considered your last grant from ADMI for museum activity. However, you'll note in my report that the ADMI have have raised concerns about their levels of funding and have suggested that they'll be seeking additional funding. The pot that's being put aside for museum funding was based on the current year's allocations. That wasn't increased by council. And so there is unlikely to be an increase from council to ADMI. However, this board may consider a application for ADMI for activities outside of museum activities. So ADMI have long since been reporting to us about all of the range of things that they are doing at Central Stories, some of which is museums and some of which is far greater than that. And so that's just one thing I wanted to suggest to the board, that ADMI may well apply to both council for the museum aspect of their operations, and this board may consider a grant for things over and above the museum. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I was going to be talking to a video, so I'm a bit put out my stride, but what we've been able to do with your support, I mean, you guys are the ones that have been with us through some hard times that we've experienced, and certainly in the last 5 or 6 years, which I've been associated with the museum, and we do appreciate that. But we still have been able to deliver that thanks to your funding, all the museum aspects, as Rebecca says, and the work that's mostly involved in the museum part of it is the collections team that we've got on processing some of our 12,000 artifacts. I'm not sure if that number is accurate, because one box of photographs might be counted with one artifact. It was actually hundreds. So the amount of processing that's going on by our wonderful team of volunteer collections, it is helping in our museum and heritage part of our job. What we are lacking in, since we have had been living under our sort of like austere funding for the last few years, is previously we were funded to be able to have like 2.75 FTE. One would be a professional collections manager. So we don't really put out the word for the community to bring the artifacts, because we've never had the resource to look after them. So even though on the front you can see all the children's activities, still got the exhibitions going on and so on, there is a build-up of strain from our shortcoming of funding over the previous few years. So I'd just like to point that out. So beyond the museum and heritage part of our services that we offer the community are the community hub services. So that includes working with all the local schools and giving them school visits to just general interests, such as the giant squid, but also in things that fit into the museum curriculum activities. So we've had groups down from Dunstan, perhaps studying the bridges and engineering and so on, and things that fit in with the curriculum that they're studying. So we are, in addition to museum, we provide them education services. Also through the holidays, the school holiday programs are very popular. So it's we look after hundreds of kids to and with the school. The activities created by our wonderful operations manager, and the imagination and effort that goes into them is considerable, and the results are incredible. And I hope a lot of you have been down there to see those take place. We had one the other night, a night at the museum, and I think I counted about 120 odd people. And we had volunteers and artists down, face painting and all sorts of wonderful activities. That's when the museum really comes to life in events like that. As well as that, we're an entertainment group as well for musicians and other artists. And we've also taken on the responsibility of being the information centre for towns again, although not with the funding that would perhaps be deserved of such a service. We just got a self-service kiosk and we do some printing of information brochures as well. I'll go back to my notes from the video we're going to be talking to is what we're making a difference, we're adding value, we're learning from the past, protecting our rich heritage, embracing diversity, respecting others, having integrity and meeting our obligations. And that's what we're doing, and these are the regional values I stated in the Centre for Eternal World of Difference website. These are the things that us as a community try to live up to. And I just need to ask the question, is there another institution that embraces these values in the Central Stories Museum Art Gallery? And if we didn't exist, I think we'd have to invent us if we were going to fulfil the obligations that we've got and those values. Yeah, so thank you for your support. And have you got anything you would like to add?
I'm Miriam Baxter, and I'm a volunteer and more recently gone on the board. And I've gone on the board because I got quite agitated as a volunteer about how stretched our staff were, and from my background, which is considerable in terms of management and governance, I was pretty concerned about whether we could sustain it, on the level where we've got 1.4 staffing. And so I'm hugely excited by what we're doing. I was born here and have arrived back, and the whole of the area, and for instance, like the research room, which is another area, is just such an amazing part. And I know on an incredibly personal level, going in there and being able to absolutely pick up parts of my past, and I was surprised at how little memory I had of things, and suddenly seeing streets, seeing people there that were very much part of my childhood. That's what we have, is this wonderful resource there, and that's at both of the museum and even yesterday when I was on volunteer duty. I don't know if you're aware, but for this last month of June, we had to make a decision as a board to cut our hours. We simply could not afford to continue to both have our manager, we could afford to have our manager away, we need to have her away and leave, but to be able to sustain the hours, we just aren't able to run to that funding. And so rather than shut it, which obviously was one option, we just wouldn't entertain it as a board, we've cut the hours from 11 to 3 for June. And when I opened the doors at 11, there were 20 people waiting. Now, you know what it was like 11 o'clock yesterday morning? And thank God we were beautifully warm, so we were very, very welcoming. But it was just exquisite, and that whole time they were in the museum part, except for the wonderful display we have from Department at the moment. That's a real magnet, and if you haven't been, please go. It's a wonderful travelling exhibition, and a little bit like the excitement that Brian brought a few minutes ago. I think our museum brings that kind of excitement to the community. And I know it's looking forward, it's not this year, but on this Friday, several of us volunteers are having a party of secondary students from Logan Park, and we're taking them around the museum, and there's 5 different areas within the museum they're looking at. So I'm loving learning about how much of a reputation we're getting, even beyond our own district, of people seeing we're an amazing resource. And so I come here and plead, and I know sometimes I can come and critique. I come here and plead for it as the most wonderful resource we have, and encourage you. And I'm very much it's really fine. Grateful is one word of what Rebecca encouraged of you to see that in the meantime, and I know I sat through all your deliberations of the council. It was really lovely to be able to report back to the board that you are looking at our proposal in terms of saying, by the 2027 paper, there'll be a significant paper We have 2 years to get through to the end. So if there's any way that you can find, it's a way to help us to look after our current staffing and get that bit more that's going to help us to be able to sustain what's become a really well-known program, we'd be hugely gratified for that.
I just had one final thing I forgot to mention. Paula puts in her apology because she was on a much negative break. She's away from here. So, she really wanted to be here, but we didn't get in front of her, so she does seem to apologize.
Because then she needed that break.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just a question, you talked about cutting your hours on field earlier. Your numbers are outstanding. There's no, I don't know about everyone else, but there's no doubt that's cutting about and trying what we can and picking up on your Rebecca's comment probably about operating expenses, one-off stuff might be an avenue, but so you've done a budget because your numbers are just going, so even with projected numbers for this year, you still think, because I still look at your last numbers and think, oh, you know, there's enough cash going around here.
The good thing about the set this year, we're going to be in negative numbers at the end of this year. I'm pretty sure of that.
So what's changed from your last, and we're talking
it's purely funding. Funding applications made a difference in the previous 2 years where we could bank a wee bit of surplus to tide us through, but we're going to be using some of that this year. And it was a funding application, well meant, but probably ill considered, and so we had to dedicate more of our funding application time to actually doing accountability for another funding. So that is just like a stick in the spokes of the whole operation. That just shows how stretched we are. We've got limited amount of time, and unless we're making the best use of that time, then things can go backwards quite quickly.
So I know you put a 25 that you took some cash out that you had accumulated as a term deposit. Yeah. So that's still there, or the
yeah, we have put that aside from the last year's funding because we're closing on next year. Yeah, we do that on the foundation bar.
Is it in for anything?
Just operating costs. Yeah. You know, we've got to pay the power bills, we've got to pay staff, we've got to pay, we've got some big bills.
Can I just add one thing too, in terms of, I said about coming onto the board about an interest in the finances. One of the areas that we are discussing right now is our understanding of what we need as a sustainable board around reserves. And that is an area that we have really got to deal with. And, you know, the practice, as you know, that we should be having enough that should things go right, we've got something to sustain. That is progress. It is not something we're all happy about when we're at. And so it's a couple of us have come onto the board, have got a particular interest in assisting, simply because we do not, you know, it isn't something that normally board members would do. But when you only get 1.4 staff, they can't even run the place from the point of view of looking after their well-being. That is our issue. They definitely are running the place, but our concern is how long can they sustain it, and we're pretty well with that.
Yeah, so I would not be hanging it for the fact of building resilience into your business. I think it's a great asset and shows your discipline. Okay.
The next question, which was, so you're talking about potentially coming back to the board for funding for other things. What sort of things are you doing at the moment would you class in the non-museum space? Just out of interest.
Yeah.
Play program.
Or there's multiple art shows and entertainment, you know, performers and the like. And so that comes at a cost. And so it will take maybe my deliberately considering the costs for activity, as I think Andy called it, the community hub activities that they do. So it's what does it cost to provide a community hub, and is the board interested in supporting it?
Do you know what you've inherited by taking over the eyesight? The information centre.
It's simply paper. Really, there's no infrastructure. I know there's some TV still down at Chemist. So
I was thinking staff. I was thinking more of staff.
Oh, staff. We haven't
staff time, but.
Oh, I'm not sure what the answer to that question is. I know as a volunteer, there wouldn't be a session I go in for that you don't have several questions, and sometimes it can be quite absorbing. And Paula's encouraged us. I know it's what she'll be doing on her day. She's there. She's encouraged us to always look to how we can support them, but that can be either. We have quite a lot of people, probably older people, coming in, our locals who are hoping they might be able to book a bus ticket there or something. So, and they're not confident about using technology. So it's either assisting to show how to do it or showing them how to do it on their phone. Now you can say, well, that's not really a job, but actually it just feels so good that people see us as somewhere they can come and be pretty hopeful of getting confident about whatever they want to do, as well as, and lots of visitors, lots of cyclists. It's a nice central spot in terms of, you know, the town picks your coffee or something, and they pop in and pick up maps. People who like travelling in four-wheel drives, you know, they'll come in and get some of the maps. But certainly, just as a volunteer, I can see lots of potential if it were formally part of our process. So, you know, you can just see where we could take it, and we've got a fairly ambitious, a very ambitious operational manager. If we had a bit more staffing, so it wasn't, you know, she can be pissing out the ideas. She doesn't then have to always be doing it. We've got a bit more staffing to help.
Martin? I just think we need to acknowledge that facilities like Central Stories, like our library, it's just not about, our library's not about books. It's about a whole bunch of other services that contribute to making this community a whole. And you're quite right when you say people coming in there, you are a teaching role as far as, you know, I managed the visit centre, the eyesight here for a very long time. And your role is a community ambassador and things like that. And as has been indicated, there are other avenues for the board to fund some of those non-core museum activities. And I'd be encouraging you guys to submit to us on that.
Can I just ask, and this is a question, it's not, I'm not being provocative or anything, what something I don't understand is we've always been called Central Stories Museum and Art Gallery. What was the, you know, that's what this, the handover was. What is it that's led to us talking only about it as a museum and then additional? I don't know. So why is it that we're not always talking about the museum and the art gallery?
We fund it for, you want to also be an art gallery, that's fine.
But it's just the whole building, Rebecca, was always there.
Yes, we call it, but we talk about ADMI rather than Central Stories. So we talk with our relationships with the trust, which is the Alexandra District Museum. Thank you. Yeah. And that you operate as Central Stories.
So you board member as well.
Yeah.
Good question. Did we used to fund from CODC the eyesight?
Eyesight was operated as a,
going to pharmacy.
the eyesight was operated in Central Stories.
Yes.
Funded as a council department, that there was a whole process, consultation process that changed that.
Yeah. And so that got passed out while it went to the pharmacy. Yeah. So okay. So that
was an alternative model was proposed and accepted by council.
Yeah. That's right. So is there any avenue to reopen? If the council, that would be a council matter.
Yeah, that would be council.
That would be council and tourism funding.
Yeah.
Go for it, council.
The likelihood of eyesights as they were to be reinstated pretty slim, because that whole side of the industry has evolved to such an extent where it ceases to exist, and many communities now just walking away from it. But the formal structure ceases to exist, the need hasn't. Yeah. That's what you're saying, you see the need. But there's still a need out there, but it's a broader sort of need of that relationships with your community as far as just being purely a tourist information centre. You ask, as I said about before, about libraries, they're not just about books, and I think this is where we need to acknowledge as a board that ADMI has a broader role in this community as opposed to just being a protector of our past, which is why I was looking for some more structural funding for the functions that you do.
That section of the Central Stories building, 100 square metres, whatever it is, that was occupied by Eyesight, the last I heard, it was sort of in limbo as to where it was going. Has any decision been made as to what process will be used for allocating that space?
We were hoping you would be able to tell us that. I think from what I believe Claire was saying, it was going to go to tender or something, and we had to be prepared to submit the tender if that was the case.
When was that then?
Well, I'm selling these birds that are not.
Probably we're looking at trying to find a commercial tenant.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think the commercial tenant has been found. We don't head to my inquiries to the property manager. Sorry. A luxury space in ADMI, the Central Stories, there was a discussion that was never been made to try and find a commercial tenant. And that has fallen on.
It's sort of been delayed at this point in time. So there used to be a learning facility which used to rented space. Paul has been quite persuasive in utilising that space for being used. And so at this point in time, we just allowing it to happen until we really use it.
The latest she said to me to just keep an eye was she had an indication from sorry, I can't remember his name. Thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, that there might be some calling to expressions of interest. So she asked that we just keep an eye in case it happens.
Actually, here's the man. Well, for this question, you definitely are. Hopefully.
No, I think Gareth is the right person to answer the question about.
Yeah, but I was thinking about with the eyesight stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah, eyesight information. Okay. So obviously that used to be done by council. It's not now. What is the future in that space?
The existing council decision is that they wouldn't fund that unexpected, reasons being that essentially we believe that there are others that could pick up that same service. The reason it's still delivered in Ranfurly and Paperless, to come together and not for because it's a shared service.
I have a question for you. And don't take this the wrong way, because you know I have been quite the advocate for ADMI over the last few years. But given there's obviously the stuff that you could say sits outside of the museum funding category, has there been any conversations, given your current financial situation and staffing situation, to look at cutting some of that back in the short term?
Cutting back the activities.
Yeah, the ones that aren't, you wouldn't necessarily class as museum.
We're obviously trying to resist that because it's what we do.
Can I try and respond on that?
Yes, please.
I watched Paula's presentation to council as part of the LTP hearings, and the message there was that that organisation will either need to increase their level of funding from C in all of its forms, or cut back activity. And so that was the message that Paula gave at the long-term plan hearing, that it's unsustainable at current levels.
Yeah, so and that's why I'm asking. So I sat and listened to that too, and given the fact that a hearing was like unsustainable, that's why I thought I'd just ask.
I think the issue is bigger than that. However, as a board member, I think, in my presentation, which I pointed out, that, we have a facility which parallels Cromwell's. And we believe very strongly that we already have a proven facility. And why would we walk back from that? We really have, it's right in the centre geographically of this district. And therefore draws in folk who see this more as somewhere that's, that they can get to more easily, you know, travelling and so on. But also, I think that we are a growing district. For us to see ourselves in any way pulling back at a time when one of the things we hear constantly from council is that we are growing, and how do we deal with that? This is simply a reflection of that. And on a personal level, I've been back in Alexandra now for, this is my 11th year, and having seen, a better word, the resurrection of our facility, it's like, you know, the phoenix coming back out. Why would we ever pull back? That would be my challenge to the community board and to council. What would that say about all of us? And going back to Andy's presentation, we would be really interested to hear how you would actually meet all your values. You didn't have something like us assisting you hugely to do that.
And yeah, I'm not going to argue that point. He's do assist hugely in that space, and it's definitely value for money, the work that happens there. I just thought, given current financial situation everybody's in, that I would just ask.
And fair enough, and we'll answer.
Yeah.
Very much as the advocates, passionately, you know, and unapologetically.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Roger, can I make just another comment then? A lot of the non-museum activities are self. So, musical groups playing there in general will have to cover their costs. Art displays in the Henderson Gallery, etc., are at a cost. I can't remember what the cost is, but it's it should cover the basic costs of actually running that display. So there should only be incidentals that would add to the museum's cost of actually the cost of putting it on.
They will need to demonstrate a case when you consider the application, so that they've got until the beginning of July to put in both the museum application and one for a community hub, and the rationale and the costings for what they might come to Vincent Community Board will need to demonstrate that they require the additional level of funding from you, and speak to what funding they receive for those activities already, so that.
Do I understand correct? So we're going to be applying, doing 2 applications beginning of July, so one
for the museums.
for the CLC, which is operate through working with multiple boards and so on.
Yeah.
We're doing the second application.
To Vincent. For not music, same time frame.
Yeah, and that's going to be structured around
And
non-using.
But it will need to demonstrate that need, that there is a cost for that community hub that you're presenting to this board for its consideration.
All right, so I think, yeah, we've had a really good, robust conversation. It just shows how important that service is to the community. That we've done that. So is somebody happy to receive the report? Martin, second to Don, all in favour? Against, carries. So thank you very much. And see you all again soon.
You're doing a wonderful job with the rosters. We're doing a wonderful job with the roster.
Oh, you can.
Clarify something about with Stella and the Astro side of things.
We can.
1 second.
Oh, we've got to keep moving now quite far behind. So if you flick us an email, we can.
Yeah, so
We
we
can
are
go from there.
completely separate from Dark Sky International. We're like digital champions of the Olympics. So just thanks to this huge.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll move on to agenda item 25.4.4 on page 123. the draft Menaburn Dam Reserve Management Plan for approval. Maria and Gordy.
Morning. I'm going to jump straight into it. So the Menaburn Dam, it's a treasured place going for its landscape history and its wide range of recreation. And so we know that lots of activities happen there: ice skating, walking, enjoying time by the water. So the reserve means a great deal to the community. This was the first reserve management plan prepared for the site. In September last year, this board resolved to begin the process. So we started by engaging with some user groups and began running the drafting the plan. We took the draft plan to the board and it was approved and then released for public submissions over an 8-week period. We had 71 submissions, really decent amount, and 4 submitters represented their views in the last meeting. We made some changes following that, and I guess a summary of the changes. So we've done clearer recognition and provision for horse riding access, retaining the prohibition on four-wheel driving and camping. That was one of the things that we went out and asked the community about. Confirming that the track used outside of the gravel road will be for walkers, bikers and horse riders only, so no four-wheel driving. Clarifying that amenities like toilets and picnic areas may be considered in the future. It's technically possible under this reserve management plan, but that requires, I guess, approved demand and funding, and so we're not there yet. And also general improvements. So throughout the process, I just want to say throughout the process, individuals in the community groups that we worked with were really thoughtful, responsive and constructive. So we appreciate the feedback there. So we're seeking your approval for the plan. If endorsed, it will be taken to council later this month for formal adoption. Once it's become operative and available to the public. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. I'm going to jump to Roger because I know that you've had some email correspondence with a member of the public.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just searching my way through the stuff. There were a number of places where the English seemed to have got itself off. In fact, on page 133, here we are. Very top purpose of the reserve management plans. Then you've got something mixed up at the bottom of that. It's an indented section.
Okay.
So you've got section 17 and section 41.3. I'm not sure what is it section 17 it's referring to. Section 41.3. I don't know what that. But anyway, it doesn't have to stand to make too much sense.
Yeah. So we've also been in contact with Joe and a few other of the user groups from the reserve over the weekend, I think, about the same things as you. So we've made the changes, and if there's any, I guess, factual things that need adjusted, they can be made. But I think they've all been made now, not on this copy though, on their version. So I think we're good to go.
Can I make
the council's?
Sorry?
They'll be tied up.
Okay, can I just clarify then that purpose one on page 133 in our agenda change policies, page 156. Which is prohibited. Policies, camping is prohibited, permitted, but that's been fixed one way or the other. What's it actually? Permitted? Prohibited?
Oh yes, prohibited, permitted. Yeah, we'll fix that one.
I think you've also got in there, I'm just looking at the email that Roger sent. Is it section 10.16, vehicle parking and access? The reserve provides informal vehicle access parking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's informal?
That one as well. So basically, so that's been adjusted and to just make it very clear that four-wheel driving is not allowed recreationally. And we've now adjusted it to show that the access is actually suitable for two-wheel driving. So it's just for getting in and out of the reserve. But once you're there, there's no four-wheel driving recreationally is the idea of that.
Right, just the word informal seems a bit odd in that context. I wasn't quite sure what that meant because it is a
good spotting.
Publicly accessible road.
And then for the final one,
and page 103.
The gas one.
Oh, yes.
of section 10.19 barbecues policy around use of.
Yeah, so is gas, accepted or not? Because, when a policy for gas or electricity, but on page, 172, going back, gas is prohibited. So in one place, gas is allowed and the other gas is prohibited. So which is it?
We've allowed it, so we've changed it to allow for it. Obviously, there's no barbecue there, but we've changed it to allow for it. So that's all.
Thank you. Yep, they're all my points. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so if you're putting a community barbecue, and previously on page 181, you said no Lisbon. And I'm thinking if you're putting a community barbecue, then.
We're not putting a community barbecue in.
Well, you've got provision of it on page
Yeah.
183.
That goes in the rubbish. Yeah, doesn't mean you need to take on a rubbish bin.
That doesn't mean that.
No.
But.
It's very expensive to drive away if you need to like them.
Mangrove Dam, it's a unique one because it is fairly isolated. So we need to think about all of those things pretty carefully. And so I guess it's an education piece. If we are going to head in those direction and make changes, it's a big education piece about, litter in, litter out. And if we decide to, that's what it is for now anyway. So it's education first.
Anything else?
I will just note too, I've tidied up, there's one part that was inconsistent on the dog roles there. So I've tidied it up to again make it consistent. So that's, but thank you very much for on those things.
And thank you very much for all the work that you've put into this. And Gordy and the rest of the team, it's been great to see this one come through. Is somebody happy to move A, B, and C, which was receives the report and acceptable significance, recommends suggested amendments and changes to the plan approved, recommends to council the adoption of the amended Manningham Dam Recreation Reserve Management Plan under its delegated authority from the Minister of Conservation. Sorry, my voice is starting to that. Yeah. So I will move it. Lindley seconds it. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to 25.4.6 on page 198. We've got proposal. Oh no, right, go back. 0.5 on page 193. We've got the tree planting reserve, State Highway 8, Gordy.
Right, thank you. So this reserve was set aside in 1929. Found the right land, as a lot of that land was in the late 20s, set aside for planting for tree purposes. So these trees on the council, the land was were removed last year mainly for safety reasons. Yes, inadvertently undertaken by neighbouring properties. So the intention was to replant this section. It's about 2 hectares and plant in the stumps, or amongst the stumps. However, we've been waiting for the Naitahu Property Limited resource consent decision, but I think I've not read that, see if they had any impact on that. And then if they do or if they don't, we would work out a plan on what we will replant that area with, and we'd need some funding to do that as well. We have allocated refund, which was no in the plan at this stage, so we have an annual plan got ready to consider how to fund that replanting. The other issue with replanting is there's no water on that site, so we would need to get water there somehow as well. And maybe that is something that we look through the neighbouring subdivision process on as well. So there's been a few balls up in the air. Some might have landed, but there's still a few up in the air that we need to talk about before doing anything there. But yes, the board does have you can make the decision if they wish to grind the stumps. That's cheaper and easier option than removing the stumps. And the two options, one not to and one to do that in the report. So I'm happy to answer any questions
It seems to me that grinding the stumps is purely a cosmetic exercise that's not going to significantly enhance that space. But I think we've got to move towards appropriate planting. I would favour plants that actually hide the stumps. In other words, somewhat higher than just the sedges and tussocks. The water is a problem. If the neighbouring property was unwilling to share water from a bore, what's plan B?
Well, we need to do some research because the frontage outside Molyneux Estates, the water from the Molyneux Park bore, one of the Molyneux Park bores, and that's max at capacity now. There's no sort of more hours in the day that it can pump water further up, so we would need to look at that, and we would have to put one in ourselves. Sure. We'd be very reluctant, clearly, to use any potable water doing anything up there.
Yeah.
And it is a tree planting reserve, which is not tussocks. It has to be trees of some sort, and whether they are mixed with native, so something that would be better than, I think, pines, because it is the entrance to Alexandra, do some nicer tree planting, and there's options to put that in the emissions trading situation as well. That was what we want to do, we want to lock that up whenever planting takes place, but we need to work through those places backwards.
It just seems prudent that we would put this decision off for a while till we see what the neighbouring subdivision decides to do along that line. That we may be able to work in with them somehow. They may decide on a bundling or something that would cover this done. So it just seems that rather than spending money on this now, we wait and see.
Yeah, I'm trying to indicate that in the report as well, and whether the neighbours straight along with that sort of thing, and you know, we need to also consider being a good neighbour, not planting things like here. But it is a tree planting reserve, so we need to work out what is the best for all parties, I guess, because in another 10 years time when the trees are bigger, being around this table, so we're going to have to make a decision if we're getting complaints, which we might get.
It was quite usually the poplars and not the right ones for neighbours.
Clearly have to go in with the eyes open to the tree planting reserve. Yeah.
Tony, the ETS, if it's coming out of trees, I'm not sure they're eligible to into the ETS. So this is pre-89, post-90 stuff.
So the minimum, I'm not too sure. After the minimum lot size is 2 hectares for a project. Yeah, I think we could register that.
I'm not talking about size. I'm talking about that where it's come from. If it was only for new forestry from the outset, I'm not sure if there's a change of federal interest on that. But going from forestry to forestry, I didn't think.
I don't think we look at those options, but it could be an option.
Yeah,
and it wasn't registered.
No,
it's really
no.
Well, I was going to come on the other side of this argument and say that at the end of the day, this is the entryway to town and it doesn't look great. And I think it would enhance that reserve space to grind the stumps down. We've got a community that's been very patient with us at another entry to town when it comes to tree stumps and clearing of trees. Patient are they going to be when now 2 of our entryways have got this particular look going on. And I get that there's no water there and there's no planting plan in place yet, but it would be a way to make it look a little bit nicer in the short term. What are the chances that this is going to be paid for by the development? No. So at some point, money is going to need to be spent in this space anyway.
Well, that's for the planting.
Yeah,
for the grinding. Yeah, I'd say there's no need to grind them down at all.
So what I think get the sorry, tidy it up a little bit faster versus leaving it potentially for years waiting for water supplies and plants to be picked out and to grow. That this resolves the issue now versus drawing this out in the same manner that we are across the bridge.
So one of the things is there's a little bit of contour, like it's not dead flat terrain. Some of the most visible stuff is actually up on a bit of a rise, and grinding your stumps isn't going to fix the whole problem.
No, we can get some plans through the board really soon. Thank you. Further decision.
It's been fairly unplanned.
So is somebody happy to move
I'll move,
A, B and C?
I'll move A, B and C.
Second. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Aye. And that's carried. Yeah. Thanks, Gordie. Right, so move on to item 25.4.6 on page 198. Proposal to approve the licence to occupy to park on 60 Boundary Road.
Good morning, I thought I'd just introduce, so Zelda's the new team leader for the special development of the property. She'll be presenting this paper today.
Thank you very much. The report is asking for your approval for granting this license to occupy to the Upcycle Town Trust. They can occupy about 125 square metres at 60 Boundary Road, and planning basically workshops to recycle and restoration of old bicycles. That's probably most of them are given to the trust to fix and being given back to the community for their use. The idea is also to present these workshops so that people that want to learn how to do their own bicycles can do that. So we're proposing that we grant this license to occupy the terms and as per the resolution.
Okay, see any questions or comments on that one?
So it's just for a term of 5 years? Yes, at the moment, yes, just because it's starting off, both parties want to see how it's working out. There's nothing. No.
Cost us nothing.
Mm.
Roger?
Do we have any knowledge of or feeling for how much demand there would be for these recycled bikes?
As far as I know, they've already started doing this sort of off site. And there's been quite a demand. I think most people in the community starting to start using electric bikes, and especially for the less fortunate, the nicer older bikes comes available. So I think it's quite a demand.
Yeah, the principal's regard for 18 months, 2 years, probably from his home property. Originally he had 1 container, he's gone to 2 containers. He's the driver, the mover, the shaker, the passionate, but I think he has changed his employment, so.
Yes.
So I'm not sure, yeah, but we've got no risk. I don't think.
Yes.
So the not having a right of renewal, that is what both sides are wanting. It's not because there's a future plan for that space.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in 5 years' time, we can come back and go, it's, you know, we know this is working now and we can actually put a lease term with it also.
We just didn't want to commit ourselves really.
I can put that as well, if you like. So, with that site, it was originally a reused shop bin, and we, through council, purchased the shed as well on that site, and we're doing a bit of a master plan exercise for that site. We're using some of our waste levy funding to basically work through what the future of that site is, and that's why the license has just been structured like that at the moment. We've actually purchased a container with our waste levy funding to be used for wider workshops. So the repeat and reuse cafe type workshops as well. That can be booked potentially as a bookable resource. So we want to sort of uplift some of the offerings around that sort of reuse, recovery of materials and different things. At the same time, we still need to work out what the full future use of that site is. So we're working with this party, that there may be other parties that come along that want to make use of that facility as well. So we think it's a great starter for that site.
Okay. Right. Who would like to move A, B, and C? Roger, seconded Martin. All in favour?
Yeah, we
against, carried. Thank you very much and welcome. So now we have got 25.4.7 on page 104. proposal to revoke part of resolution 25.3.2. Sarah.
Yeah, so just a procedural paper really, just to cover off the decisions following the 20th of May meeting, where council decided that for the 2025-34 long-term plan, Boston Festival will be added as a line item. So it's just to tidy up the previously made decision at the BCB meeting regarding that concession grant.
Is there a possibility instead of putting this back into grant funding, we can transfer it to central storage and see what we've heard today?
When it's a contestable fund, would they not need to go through the application process?
I can answer that it is from the promotions fund, this one in particular. So they would have to go through, I don't know, Dylan's probably going to add to this, they would have to go through the grant application and it would be needed to be tied to the what we can grant under that fund. So they need to demonstrate that the criteria.
I'm getting nods from Dylan, so. That's yeah, definitely. Hopefully, they come back to us with an application in the next round. And it's just a reminder that that does to the public that does mean we now have 50,000 sitting in the pot for the next round on the promotions and events. Plus, we've still got 9.5 from the previous financial year.
14.5.
Yeah. So you funded Boston Festival through BCB and you've split it over 2 years. You're using the remains of this year's fund.
Yeah.
So that rescinding is from this financial year and part next year. So yeah, you've already committed something. So
yeah,
in front of me in the next
I think 5,000. So yeah, we got 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gave 5. Yeah. So I think we gave 5,000 to cricket. So there's 45,000 still sitting there. So yeah, to anybody got an event or a promotion coming up, please apply. All right, somebody happy to, that's a really straightforward one, happy to move A, B and C. Roger, seconds, Di, all in favour, aye, against.
And you abstain?
Yes, and yeah, Martin's abstaining. Just with that. So now page 213, Vincent financial report for the period ending March 2025. Welcome, Don.
So paper is being read. So this is the financial report for 31 March 2025. At that point, it had an overall favourable variance of $256,000 against the revised budgets. Revenue has a favourable variance of $466,000. Driving this variance is the user fee and other income, internal interest revenue, reserves contributions, and land sales. So the grants and subsidies are a bit behind, and this is just due to funding that has been received for the Alexandra River or expected to be. And the land sales income includes both the sale of the Omakau Hall, which the funding will transfer through to the Omakau Club, and the Muslim Town land that was sold. Expenditure has an unfavourable variance of $210,000. Driving this variance includes rates expense, fuel and energy, staff costs, contracts, and professional fees. The professional fees overspend relates to the disposal of land in Martin Town, and that will be offset by the profits in the sale. The fuel and energy variance continues to be from heating outside pool, the outside of the Alexandra pool. And that has been turned off, and the staff costs also relate to the Alexandra pool, and this is offset by higher income from pool and swims. Expenditure has a total variance of $642,000, with 52% of the budget being spent. Parks and reserves is available by $528,000, with projects being in all sorts of different stages. you've got big projects on the go at the Alexandra River Park, which is progressing, and we've got the resurfacing of the Pioneer Park, the rec area, being completed as well. Property has a favourable variance of 114,000. There's a few projects here that have been carried forward into the next financial year that have sort of been tied up amongst the LTP consultation, the halls, as well as aligning with projects like the Millennium Park Stadium. That's me. Any questions?
Any questions? Comments?
Sorry.
I'll answer some questions. The comment was going to be, given the unfavourable variance of 47,000 in fuel and energy, I think it'd be a good idea that we don't ever turn those heaters back on at the outdoor pool. Now, so that's quite an expensive. It says in here, it might not be a question for you, Don, but for somebody, it says in here under the total property has an overall 114,000, page 216 of the agenda. The Molyneux Stadium had a favourable variance, but this project was on hold pending further decisions. Just wonder, what were those further decisions?
I believe it was the reshuffle of the project that you guys made a decision on during the year. I think it's sending out dollars on, and I think it was just moving that into the LTP. Doing those decisions of it.
Thought it might have been, but I thought I'd just get clarity on that. Yeah. And then over on the same, so the reserve budget with the interview balance 5.8 with the recent decisions around the turf and the Manukau Valley Community Hub with the general Vincent reserves. How is that looking now?
It's estimated at the LTP. Don't quote the full number, as it might about $2 million left. And that does not include the remaining sections that does.
Does that include your own account?
The own account pool, which would be transferred through, but that's part of the funding structure of the. So that stands for, I think, 80,000, it's top of my head, will transfer through and has been incorporated into that additional funding of the one up to 1.6.
It's a question of transfers, just to help me understand. On 217, where you've got the Vincent reserves, balance sheets of effectively. What's the source of transfers in, transfers out? Are they, is that a rate funded thing? Is it a capital sale? Is it, and is it end, I suppose?
Yes, so it'll be a multitude of things. So transfers and will include funded depreciation. It will also include any capital grants that have come through. And it may also be internal interest revenue. So that's all sorts of things that will build up the reserve. And new transfers out will be capital expenditure and any unfunded operational expenditure that the
Funded depreciation is target rates.
But just to note that not all depreciation is fully funded. It's done at different ranges from 100% down to internal decisions made.
And I want to sound like a broken record with this question, but given we are getting very close now to commence of a new LTP and the new way of rating the district, has there been any decisions made on what was this going to look like for ward-specific reserves under the new system?
Not as yet. Unfortunately, we've been tied up with the processing of financials for the LTP and working through that process. So it has been a little bit.
Please do talk about.
Okay, anyone else? Gabriel moves that we received that report. Tony, second. Roger, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
And now we'll just. Ready to go, Tona?
I certainly
We'll
am. Thank you.
move on to the news report. Welcome.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody, and lovely to be joining you this morning, albeit online. This has been a really busy last 6 weeks since the last BCB meeting. So I've just covered off some highlights for my report. So all of local government meeting, which included the recent release of an online tool to support women and men in the face of online abuse. And Sam Stubbs was also talking about the potential to fund significant investment projects from the capital of KiwiSaver providers such as Simplicity does with housing. I also attended the Affordable Housing Summit, where they talked about the end of the golden assumption, that assumption being that when people retire, they will own their own home mortgage free. There was also discussion around the broadening of poverty, including families' abilities to pay for fresh fruit and vegetables every week, which has declined significantly since the mid-1980s. The place of community housing providers in helping solve challenges around housing, and also the companionship benefits of Abbey Field style housing. And there is, of course, one underway in Central Otago, hopefully. Henderson House hosted an event last month, which showcased the incredible landscaping that they have undertaken at that site. And there are some incredible new artists lining up to be the artist in resident at that beautiful location, which you can actually see from where you are out the window across the river. There was an open day at Matakanui Station for their Balance Farm Environment Award, which was very successful. Around 140 people turned out there to look at some of the changes that Tracy and Paddy have undertaken on farm, including hydroelectricity and solar. Council held their LTP hearings and then deliberations, which led to some great results for community facilities. A key point of balancing wants, needs and aspirations of our communities. It's not all about the bottom line. Otago Regional Growth Summit in Dunedin was attended by ministers, MPs and councils from around the south. We also hosted a visit from the new Taipei City Council, who were in New Zealand looking at environmental solutions for wastewater and rubbish. They took a lovely field trip to the wastewater treatment plant at Cromwell, and also a discussion around our multiple wheelie bins, which they were quite impressed with. I was a judge at the YES, which stands for Young Enterprise Scheme program in Cromwell, which covers schools from around Central Otago and Queenstown Lakes. It was really neat to hear the pitches for the business ideas that these small groups of young people have. Some excellent ideas, including some that I would be quite keen to purchase myself. So it was great to hear from them and be a part of that for the day. Minister Andrew Hoggard visited Lauder Creek. They've got another planting there in conjunction with Waiora Manahira catchment group, which was looking amazing. That is the minister's second visit to plantings that have been undertaken by the group. They can, of course, both be seen from the Otago Central Rail Trail if you're cycling through. I visited the Aranui Dam and had a history lesson with Ken, who joined you this morning, which was very interesting. It is a beautiful spot up there, and it's great to hear that alongside the community taking part in looking after that area, there is probably a place for us to play. So we'll wait to hear what options there might be for that raupo. Had a citizenship ceremony where we made 20 new Kiwis. That is always a really wonderful day, and I am getting good at some of the good mornings for our different cultures that we have. Some of them require a fair amount of Googling and practice beforehand to try and enunciate some of those unfamiliar words. I had a visit to look at some accommodation options around Cromwell, and also the lack of accommodation and the changing aspects for short-term and long-term accommodation there. We had a Southern Water Done Well workshop, and of course that submission closed on Friday. We had received 303 submissions, which I think is pretty great on the back of our record number of long-term plan submissions, and also recognising that submission fatigue is a real factor. We also released the report from the Health Working Group, which went to Minister Brown, so that is now publicly available via the Trust's website. and we are meeting with Minister Meager, who is the South Island Minister, to discuss this tomorrow, and then the Health Minister early next month. And Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, congratulations to Craig for the recent achievement of the target that Central Otago has for Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, 15 young people into permanent full-time work, alongside a number into part-time and seasonal work. So we look forward to continuing that program in the next financial year. Thank you very much. And Sarah, I've written it down, so I will email it to you. That is my report.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to move that we receive that report. Martin, second, and Lindley, all in favour? Aye. Against, carried. And then we'll move straight into the chair's report. So it's been a busy 6 weeks since we last met. It's included the usual meetings with the Alexandra Council Social Services and other groups and people. We represented CRDC at the Otago Masonic Lodge Charitable Trust Grants presentation, where $22,000 was given out to community groups, including Women's Football, Scouts, Clyde Theatre Group, and the Life Education Trust. A highlight of that was definitely fulfilling a childhood dream of meeting Harold the giraffe. It's quite a fun moment. My children were definitely jealous afterwards. I also attended a Q&A session with business leaders and Roger, and involving MPs Joseph Mooney and Miles Anderson, which was quite informative and very interesting. I imagine Roger will have more to say on that momentarily. I also attended the full day of the LTP verbal submissions, which was very interesting and informative. Very long day, but good on all the people that came along to speak. And I followed this up with attending the full day of the LTP deliberations, where I presented a slideshow presentation on the board's recommendations on the halls, the outdoor pool, Dunstan Turf, Manahiki Valley Community Hub, and moving the Blossom Festival from our contestant into the Tourism Fund. And I'm very pleased to report that Council approved all of our recommendations. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Mayor and Councillors for doing that, and to all the staff involved in this long and complex process, and for the work that they did behind the scenes to get it done. Also, a massive thank you also needs to go to the people of the Vincent Ward, who made up 46.8% of submissions and 83% of the youth submissions. And we asked to hear from our community, and they came out in really good numbers, and they should all be really proud of that achievement. Finally, I just need to say a massive thank you to the members of this board for your engagement and work through this process to get the balance right and make recommendations that meet the needs of the community that we represent. I think VCB went above and beyond in this LTP, but we've got the results to show that. So thank you very much for all the work you put in. And finally, just a big congratulations to Tracy and Paddy on their Otago Regional Supreme winners of that award concern. No, it's not online. Yeah, yes, I was trying to find it online. So big congratulations to them for the work that they've put in. And I'm happy to remove that my report we received. And Martin, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. And now we'll move on to members' reports. We'll mix it up, we'll go the other way today. So Tony.
Okay, Elevate business breakfast at the Finery, two from our Dunstan committee meetings, bit of a debrief of the Eastern Clyde One Food Festival and planning for next one. Alexandra Bottom Festival committee meeting, and went to a planting day in the rain for the Keep Alexandra Clyde Beautiful, so replacing some heritage fruit trees by the old railway station. Good day for trees to be planted, and a great day to be planted, Mr. Sarah.
Tony, Lindley?
It's just been a really busy month with reading 5,000 pages of submissions, followed by hearing the submissions, then deliberating on them, and then Jaden giving us a really good summary of how the Vincent all Jaden made. It's good to see those forms, the resolution.
Like Councillor had on, it's an LTP. And like the field, Lindley, overall a very good result for the community board. The level of engagement was And we'll have a similar sort of response to the 3 water decisions too. So that's hearings panel. Quietly, the last 6 weeks, but the panel meets today to do some deliberations on coming from the January hearing, and then we have another meeting tomorrow. So that's about me. Yes.
Thank you, Martin. Di. Just attended meetings of the Alexandra Rugby Club and the Alexandra Golf Club, their monthly meetings, and also just working with Bex and the family of Valens Cottage, and we're having a catch up on Thursday, I think it is, to keep talking about what may happen or may not.
Watch it. Attended a meeting of Keep Alexandra Clyde Beautiful. Attended a meeting of the Alexandra and District Museum Board. Chaired 2 meetings of the Creative Writers Circle. It's actually coming along quite nicely and getting a Linley Fernley in for to give a workshop. Gave a talk to Alexandra U3A, University of the Third Age. Attended 2 Elevate Business Group breakfast meetings. I think the Elevate Business Group is newly founded, but I think it actually has a momentum that will keep it going. Feel quite positive about that. Attended a meeting of Central Otago District Arts Trust. Attended a meeting of staff of CODC and Central Stories to review the relationship, and that was commented on earlier. Stepped down from the board of Central Otago REAP after 14 years, including 8 as chair. Attended a meeting of Elevate with Joseph Mooney and Miles Anderson, so that's Jayden has commented on that. There were far more questions and there was time for us to get answers, so it would have been good to have had more time to have been able to talk to them. Attended the opening of the refurbished Henderson House. Tamer has commented on that, and it is a great place, a refreshing sense. The gardens have been completely changed. The house itself has been refurbished, and I think a really great place for artists and residents to feel that they are in a special place when they come here. Enjoyed a performance of Waiata Theatre of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I mention this because I think Waiata Theatre has established itself as a very, very good performance group that provide not quite professional but semi-professional performances. And performed in the Central Otago Regional Orchestra in Cromwell and Arrowtown. They were two sold out performances. So that was successful. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm happy to move that we receive the members' reports. No second, all in favour? Yep. Aye, against, carries. Good work, everyone. Right, so we move on to agenda item 25.4.12. So on page 221, the governance report. So we do have an update from Maria on the play strategy, but well, are there any questions about the governance report itself?
What was the update on, sorry?
The play strategy.
Oh, no, just really thrilled to see that the Pines stage 4's been signed off and 2, 2, 3 have been applied for. It's a big relief. It's taken a long time, isn't it?
Good to see. I did actually have a question as well on page 223 in the agenda. The Clyde Museum redevelopment, Clyde Police lockup. So what happens with that? Does it come off this report now that it's been agreed to divest? Or is it still going to be quite a process?
It will be process. I mean, until the adoption of the LTP later this month. And then we'll go right through what that actually means and the steps we need to do. Yeah, it's going to get physically relocated and the process to enable that as well. But that will go before council.
And the only other one I had was on page 232. And I just wanted to comment that it is so good to see the word matters closed on the Alexandra Cemetery Arnott Street boundary. Good work, team. Really good to see that one done. Very long journey, but he's got there. Strategy update. Oh, here she is. You have any fun things for us to?
I'm sorry. Okay, today's just a quick variable update. There's not only PowerPoint. The idea is just this month I'm going to go around, talk to all of the boards and just give a little bit of an overview of where the play strategy project is at. Just so you're all aware. So yeah, this is an update on Central Otago's first play strategy. So first ever. The strategy came out of our wider open spaces strategy, and it recognises that while council has long supported play through playgrounds, skate parks, bike parks, we've never actually had a really clear group approach on what play means to the community and how we should provide for it in decades ahead. So we've got the play strategy and we've begun with deep early engagement. We're in, which was stage one of the strategy. So listening and discovery time. We didn't want to make assumptions, so we wanted to build a strategy from the ground up and with that community at the centre. You remember we worked really closely with Sports Central on this one, and so they were really invaluable. They led engagement with their tamariki, so they went out to the schools and did like very like awesome workshops to get some really good feedback from them. We had QR codes at every designated play space, and so that included playgrounds, skate parks, bike parks. So that gave us real-time site-specific feedback. I mean, it hasn't just helped inform the strategy, it's already starting to give us really good information already. So for example, we're just picking up on that specific things about a playground or a space that need to be fixed, or easy things that can be fixed, and we can put a contract with onto that straight away. My computer screen has frozen, so now I'm going without notes, but that's okay. That's going to tell you. I wanted to give you some really specific feedback about what's happening in the Vincent Award. So, So there's actually 13 play spaces in the Vincent Award. From memory, now that I don't have my notes, what I can tell you is that the Vincent Ward, the play spaces are really active there. They're really well used and definitely appreciated by the community. Most, I'm just thinking, every play space had a minimum of 4 visits using QR codes, but significantly more for a lot of others. The next step in the plan is, now that we've got all this information, we're going to go away and we're going to draft the strategy. So that's going to be happening throughout the pre-election period. And then after that, we're going to come back to you with the final strategy. I'm sorry, with the draft strategy, which will then take back out to the community again, check that we've gone in the right direction, and hopefully we can. A little bit high now that I don't have my notes, but if anyone has any questions, that might be the best way to go about this. But I think the main thing that we've learned through this process is that the community are really engaged on this topic. And I just saw the number before my computer froze. It's something like we've reached over 580 different people in this consultation, because there were so many different prongs of the engagement. So it is a huge amount of information we've ended up with, and it has taken us a bit of time to go through and make sure we're picking it up in a nice way and making sure that we can get useful information out of it. And I also wanted to thank the elected members as well, as our elected members are super engaged in this project, and might have seen some fun videos about how they used to play, what they do now for play in their time, and what they think like in Central Otago in the future. And thank you, Jane. I think you visited was it like almost every playground in the district?
Oh, we got very close.
Yeah. No, it was awesome.
Thank you. So Tamati actually he responded to it and I just found it again. So we were at the Clyde one down by the river. And one of the questions was, what could make this play space even better? He'd said a flying fox and adding a golden statue of Tim Cadogan riding a mower with a top hat. Yeah, so I imagine you got some very interesting ones from some kids.
Yeah, and that was some of the we've been asked that, like, how did we actually work through that information, because it might seem like on face value that might not be useful, some of that, and sometimes it's not, but very entertaining. But a lot of the time, so you'll start to see trends. People are saying we want a bigger slide, we want more slides, we want this, we want that, and so our job is not to go, okay, cool, right, back to you guys, we need to put slides everywhere. I don't think that's necessarily what we have to do. What we have to go is, I think that's our community telling us that they do want more risky play. So we can provide that without, while still staying, within our requirements and making sure it's safe.
So I haven't heard you talk about any of the other aspects of council, like swimming pools, museum, driving walk, and there's an outdoor area, swimming pools, that sort of feature in your.
Yeah, so it's something that the strategy will probably acknowledge. You know, there are other assets that we have where we play can happen, but this strategy is focusing a little bit more on, well, I guess we're starting. The starting point is our designated play spaces, the play spaces that we already have. And I guess the strategy actually really needs to decide when it comes to play, what it is that counts, like what do we as a parts team, what's our role. And so we have made a point of saying play doesn't just happen in playgrounds and in designated play spaces. And that's to sort of, I guess there's a creative element here. We can provide those opportunities or without it having to be a playground all the time. For example, there's like this concept of play on the way. So it might just be, there can be hopscotch and things like that drawn onto into the greenways to encourage, I guess, a more playful experience as you're going through the greenway without spending,
Just conscious the outdoor pool with Molyneux's a little bit contentious, but it's a play. I would have thought it was probably a play area that might have been played.
Yeah, and obviously, play does happen at those spaces, but I guess the strategy maybe isn't going quite into those spaces. We're not. We don't deal specifically with the pools.
Yeah, it's on the outside area, but because of the huge area out there play area. Okay.
Okay, brings.
Thank the council in front, so the number of this project, this is the designated play spaces. And it's really about what council can do to facilitate play, not necessarily build every playground and put everything in it, but what people want to play in nowadays, it's not just swings and slides, it's all sorts of ways people want to play. And water play is separate again. That will need to be factored in on how that's done safely. So this is more about our outdoor open spaces around the district, which are just really core of the designated play spaces. And can we keep up with all our play equipment in those? No, it's a very expensive job. But what do people want to, what are the trends telling us that people want to have how the kids and adults want to play? And that's what the strategy would be. It won't be saying, swinging and sliding and flying fox here, it's something there. More at slightly higher level, but what happens with each playground will be the next level for the LMTP inspiration.
It's also worth mentioning that water play did come up a lot here, and I guess it is part of, it's a part of our identity a little bit here. So I guess there were two things I noticed that I thought were sort of unique to us, not entirely unique, but there's like this demand for winter play opportunities. Like people see us as a bit of a winter playground here, and there were suggestions that maybe we could lean into that a little bit more. And then water play as well, which can happen at swimming pools, but also in natural areas like our rivers, obviously, and there can also be splash pads and things like that in playgrounds. So yeah, even if we decide that that's not our area to go into, it's not to say that we can't sort of, but we want to have an overall arching view over the play and make sure we're thinking about those things.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no, still frozen.
Somebody happy to move that we receive the governance reports? Roger, all in favour?
Yeah.
Against? Carried. So the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 29th of July at 10 AM.
I'll put an apology in, thanks, Sarah. Otherwise,
And I was just about to add, we're finally going to get this photo updated, but we're not. We will get there. Lindley, you'll get in there without being cropped in. All right, so I'm happy to move that we exclude the public in this next part of the meeting on grounds of commercial sensitivity. Roger will second it. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.